All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Chris Liu, and I'm going to be, kind of hosting this session. And as you can see on the screen, it is the workshop for encouragement for aging adults. And Dr. John Hsieh is going to be our speaker for this segment. He is a psychiatrist working in mostly private practice and sometimes a little bit in the public clinic as well, once a week. And so we kind of went through the longer bio for him last night. So I thought we'd start with a few different questions to find out more from him. Actually, a practical question, John. I was wondering, a lot of times I think people don't know the difference between a psychiatrist like yourself and a psychologist. And I know I usually tell them that and actually I just want to check with you too, is a psychologist, a therapist, and a counselor, are they all pretty much synonymous, or are there actually different things? And then what is the difference between those versus a psychiatrist?
Yeah, so the easiest way to think about it would be a psychiatrist has a medical degree, either MD or DO, and can prescribe medication. So that's the clearest distinction, okay? Now, psychologists, therapists, counselors, what they do is they do counseling therapy and they don't use medication. Now, why do they have different names? They have different names because of their degree. Psychologist usually has a PhD or a Psych D. A therapist could be a licensed social worker, or they can have a professional licensed counseling PLC degree. Yeah. So those are the main distinctions. So if you think about psychiatrist, you think about this person can prescribe medication and has medical training. If you think about psychologist, therapist, they have training in therapy. Now, certain psychiatrists can do therapy, some don't. So you just have to ask the psychiatrist whether they do therapy or not. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is that clear?
I think so. Yeah, I didn't know the difference between the PhD and the social worker.
Yeah.
Or is there also like like the therapist that has a degree or license in counseling?
Yeah, professional licensed counselor, PLC. Yeah. Okay. There's also marriage and family counselor. They have a different degree also. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's usually kind of how I describe it to my patients as well, because the names are so similar to the people think they're the same thing. Like, no, yeah, exactly. I tell them, so the psychiatrist is the one who can prescribe, and the others are the ones that talk to you, basically. And and also commonly, I know from my family medicine background, most of the data shows that for a lot of things, it's usually the combination of medication and therapy that usually works better than either one alone. Is that right?
For the most part, yes. For the most part, yes. Yeah. But depends on what's going on, right? Some people might not need medication. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, definitely the milder ones, either one by themselves might be enough, and but then just kind of maximum them.
Yeah, I would say if it's mild or if there's a clear conflict or external reasons, then you don't need medication, right? So if there's a clear issue like marital conflict, then maybe the medicine can decrease your anger a little bit, but you still gotta, talk to work that out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's what I was telling people. It's like the medication will help, exactly like you say, kind of mellow you out a little bit, maybe not be so anxious, not so depressed, but still need to know what to do with all the thoughts that you have, right? In your
what's emotions. A core issue? Yeah, what's a core issue? Yeah.
Great, good to know. I'm telling my patients the right things. That's good. Just want to check.
Yeah.
All right. And then also, I was wondering. I noticed in your bio that you are pursuing biblical counseling. What led you to that? To pursuing that?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. So in my residency training at that time, Baylor was pretty therapy heavy. So even as a psychiatrist, I receive a lot of therapy training. I think the program might be a little bit different now. So when you receive therapy training, it has different schools of philosophy of how to do therapy. And the more traditional ones flows out of Freud. And when you think about Freud and what comes out of that, initially, Freud talks about issues as a conflict, right? Conflict between your ego, superego. And from that conflict, you develop different defensive mechanisms, like, passive aggressive denial, stuff like that. So that's one way to look at men's issue, okay? And from Freud flows out of something called object relational. That is issues, not just conflict, but interpersonal. So they would say you have an issue about certain things because of poor relationship between you and your mother and your father, okay? So that was kind of the training, the background about thinking about a person's issue. But, I did that for a few years. I felt that's not really men's main issue, right? When we think about Christian, what's our main issue? It's sin. But this secular model doesn't really address that because it's not coming from a Christian perspective. So that's when I feel like, okay, I'm not saying that this theory has no application, but it just doesn't go in some ways deep enough. So that's when I start to think about, well, what does the Bible say about this? What does the Bible say about that? And that's when I start to feel like I'm a Christian, my faith is very crucial to my life. I need to know, not just talking about people's past problems, I need to know how to use the Bible to counsel people. That's why. Another thing, I felt, I can talk about this forever, but so this is my last point. I feel that at church, we come to church on Sunday and we talk about, Christ is enough for your problem, you should go to God. But then after church, when people really have issues, they will say, you should go see a therapist, you should see a psychiatrist. So I feel like there's a disconnect about what people think they should do and what people actually do. And the issue will be, I think what happened is that our theology does not become practical. Like our theology stays in our head. And most people don't really have a way of seeing how their theology actually can apply to their daily life. So that's, I have many things I want to say. And I feel like it's not like a huge issue, but I feel like there's inconsistency in the way we think about counseling, even at a local church kind of context. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It does sound like a big topic. So find John at HCC, Houston Chinese Church, and we can get more details.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. Well,
not just it's my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for the church. Of course.
Right. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll hand it over to you then.
Okay. Let me screen share. Let me see. Okay. I'm gonna do a full screen for my PowerPoint. Can you guys see the full screen PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Hold on. Let me go to the first page. There you go. Is this good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we want to do for my talk, I want to think about what ways we can encouraging aging adults, from the Bible. And then in the end, I have a section for the caregiver also, because last week someone was caring for the older for his elderly father, and then he said to me, "Oh, I want to go to your session for sure." And I started thinking about it. I was like, "Oh, I need to have a section for the caregivers," but because I feel like in this context, a lot of us might be caregivers, so I have a section specific for that. So for that too, okay. The first one is just a cartoon. I can show you guys. It says bunion pads, liniments, reading glasses, hot water bottle, blanket, hot pills, and laxatives. Okay, let's go grocery shopping. So, you know, it kind of helps us to think about what we think about aging, right? And what do we think about elderly people? A lot of times we really focus on the negative, physically weak, prone to illness, cognitive decline, dependent, lonely, isolated, challenging for the family, a burden. These are the common themes that we think about when we think about elderly people and aging. But the first question we should ask us is this the way the Bible talk about elderly, talk about aging, right? In Proverbs, it says that 6:13, gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained in the righteous life, right? And then Proverbs 20:29, the glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair. Actually, the Bible talks about aging and old age with honor and glory. The world might look at growing old from a negative point of view, but it's actually a blessing from God. When we read Genesis about Abraham aging, Isaac aging, it's talking about blessing and the life that they had. So if you're a caregiver, we need to have a healthy view of aging first. To know that this person that we care for, sure, their strength is not the same, but it is God's blessing to preserve their long life. It's also important for us to view our own aging, right? I think, the American culture really promote youth, whatever that's new, whatever that's hip, whatever that's cool. I don't want to look down on young people. I'm still kind of young, but we need to have a healthy view about our own maturity, our own aging, right? We don't want to keep thinking about the good old days. Hey, when I'm 20, I can do this and that. We need to think about, it's such a blessing that God gave us this life. My 40s, my 50s, my 60s. What can I do? This is a quote from John Piper. He says that to resist aging seemed to me a kind of unbelief that heaven is really good. And living a long time with God is good. And having the experience and the age to care in deeper ways for the young and share life with them is good. It is good to grow old with God. Okay. Aging under God's care is a gift and a blessing. Let's think about Paul's example, right? Paul, at the end of life, this is what he says to Timothy. He's about to die, he's pretty sure, because he says, I'm already being poured out as a drink offering. The time for my departure has come. I fought a good fight. I finished the race. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. A life lived well for God and aging is a beautiful thing. Like Paul to Timothy, it's a tremendous blessing to the church and to your family. So let's talk about, I want to have that big picture in mind before I talk about some common challenges, because there are common challenges. Yeah. And these are the four common ones, physical decline, grieving the death of a spouse, friends, family members, perceived loss of purpose, control youthfulness, and guilt or regrets over the past. So, quickly, accelerated physical decline. We talk about this yesterday already, so I'm just gonna go through the next slide, okay? Now, when we encourage, people who are going through that aging process, when they really notice their physical decline, one of the things we need to help them to understand, to see, even for ourselves, is for them to grow in their dependence on God. Psalm 71, verse 8 to 9 says, "My mouth is full of praise and honor to you all day long. Don't discard me in my old age, as my strength fails. Do not abandon me." I think this is a beautiful psalm, right? As we grow old, we know that our strength will fail. But depend on God, asking God to be with us. It's not just for aging adults, even for caretakers, right? We need to recognize our limitation, grow our dependence on God. You cannot do it all. And we need to recognize our limitations. J.I. Packer, who's a theologian who passed away recently in his 90s, this is what he says. He says, maintaining zeal, God's word, as our body wear out is a special discipline to which we aging Christians are called. Realism requires to remember that memory, particularly short-term memory, will weaken. Logical tightness of speech will loosen. Powers of concentration will diminish. Physical exhaustion will take us sooner or later. Energy level will keep going low. Zeal, however, should be unflagging every day, all day and all the way. It is a spiritual discipline to maintain that zeal for God, even as our body grows weaker. Another thing I usually encourage older believers is that even though their physical body is declining, their inner being is actually being energized and renewed by God daily. Paul says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 16, 17. So we do not lose heart. We don't get hopeless. We don't get disappointed. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Sure, right? Our physical ability peaked in our 20s or 30s. If you're Tom Brady, you can keep playing football at your 40s, okay? But there's only one Tom Brady, okay? But our sanctification continues throughout our life, right? By God's grace, even when we are 60, 70, we can continue to grow to be more like Christ. I can tell you, I can never play basketball like I was when I was in my 20s, okay? But by God's grace, I hope I'm more mature than I'm in my 20s, and hopefully I'll be more mature, Lord willing, in my 50s and 60s, right? Paul has this encouragement. He says in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7 to 8, train yourself for godliness. For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. So, helping your aging friends, parents, yes, to recognize physical limitation, but do not neglect that inner being, inner life being renewed by God day by day. So that's the first challenge. The second one is grieving the death of a spouse, friends, and family members. For aging believers, if you are married, you might suffer watching the physical decline and death of your spouse and have to deal with the associated grief and loneliness. You will face loss of friends and family members. And as we age, one hard reality will be we'll begin to attend more funerals than weddings. Yeah. So how do we deal with that? And how do we help, people who are aging dealing with this difficult reality? First of all, I want to say that grief is a normal response. Okay. A lot of times people come to me and say, I'm really sad because someone passed away. Can I feel better? Well, I tell them, feeling sad, this is normal. If you don't feel sad, I will actually be worried. Some people feel sad because of they are being sad, you want to normalize their response so that they won't become depressed or frustrated because of this persistent grief. Okay. It's going to be there. It's that reality, that sadness is going to be there. Okay. But gradually it will get better. Okay. So there will be good days and bad days, but gradually there will be more good days than bad days. It's kind of a process. Okay. Some people might be like, I'm doing very well, and all of a sudden this particular day something trigger, then I feel really bad. Does that mean that I'm not doing well? I would say no. You got to take a long view. Okay. Not a good example, but like the stock market, it's not very good right now, but stock market goes up and down. Hopefully eventually you'll go up, right? So it's kind of like our grief response. Okay. Good days and bad days. Okay. It can persist for a long time, the grief, the sadness. Okay. But it will not last forever. I'm not saying that you will forget about the person. It's just that when you think about the person, you will not be thinking about the lost, but more about, treasure the time you have. So the person will always stays with you, but gradually, you're gonna be better. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 4 says, there's a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance. That's life. Okay, that's life. There are going to be good times and bad times, difficult times and good times. Okay, we have to accept this reality. Some people, they're also averse to suffering. They want to do everything they can to prevent suffering. I will tell them that's not possible. That's impossible. Okay, and that's not what the Bible says about life. Okay, life has good times and bad times. Okay, and we need to be realistic about that. And so how do we help people when they are in that grief period, whether it's loss of a family member or friend? A lot of times they are so sad they don't have the words to say. And I will help, encourage them to, go to the Psalms, and maybe if you're so sad you can't pray, then just read some Psalms that help you express yourself, right? And just pour your heart before God. Psalm 62 verse 8 says, trust in him at all times, all people, pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Pour your heart out before God. I think a lot of times Christians, we feel like when we pray, we got to say the right words, we got to have the right theology. If it doesn't sound right, we don't want to pray. No, that's not the way. You want to be honest and pour out your heart before God. In the book of Job complained to God, was angry with God, disappointed with God, but God did not condemn Job in the end for the way he interacted with him. Why? Because he stayed with God, He continues to pour his heart out before God. And so be honest with God. You might even say the wrong thing. It's even better than not talking to God at all. Okay. I think that's very important. We have to be honest with God. Okay. The second point. Okay, I'm gonna keep talking, okay? Second point is that you have to talk to other people who have similar experiences. There are people, there are people at church who has gone through this, okay? It might not be exactly the same, but there are people who have lost friends and family. You are not alone. one of the temptations when we suffer is that we want to isolate, okay? But don't do that, okay? Talk to other people who had similar experiences, okay? So we have to accept our grief, but we cannot let that dictate our life. So if you are caring for your parents or friends, you really need to do your best to help them not isolate. When people isolate, that's when things start going down here. Okay. Be hopeful. Be hopeful. Paul again in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13 to 14. He says that we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep. That means those who are dead, you know. That you may not grieve as others do who have no hope. We should not grieve as other people who do not have any hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. That means this is not the end, right? That they will resurrect, you know, at the coming of Christ, you know. Yeah. But we need to be hopeful, okay? One day we are going to die too, but we know that our hope is not on earth, but in heaven. So we need to, it's hard, but we need to kind of help them to see a heavenly perspective. Heavenly perspective. This is my grandmother's grave in Taiwan. And on her tombstone, there's that verse from Romans 14, 7 to 8. Okay. And it says this: for none of us lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord. And if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. This eventually, we're all going to pass away, right? But the most important thing is that we belong to God. We belong to God. And we're going to reunite with God in heaven. The next difficulty is perceived loss of purpose, control, and usefulness. Loss of purpose, control, and usefulness. You know, culture and technology are rapidly changing these days. Right? Aging adults can experience a loss of usefulness and feel out of date, especially things like computer, smartphones. You know, I don't really know what the kids are using, TikTok. I don't know how to use TikTok, you know. I feel out of date myself, you know. Things are changing really fast. Yeah. They can also experience loss of control when they realize that they can no longer be independent. They realize that they now need to be with family. They can no longer drive. They need to be on their own. They cannot be on their own. Okay. And it's difficult. Viktor Frankl, he was a Jewish psychiatrist and was placed in a concentration camp during World War II. Like many people, he lost family members, parents, his brother, and even his wife. And he noticed one interesting thing about people who are in concentration camp. He realized that how people do and whether they can survive the cruelty of concentration camp is actually not determined completely by a person's physical fitness. He realized that those who can survive the cruelty and the abuse and the neglect of concentration camp because they maintain some kind of purpose in life, okay? The purpose could be, I want to survive this so I can go back to my hometown. It could be, I want to survive this so I can be reunited with my family. So the point is that everyone needs some kind of purpose. Everyone needs some kind of meaning for their life. This is a picture of me. I was in med school. I think that might be my first year, you know. I don't even know how to tie a tie, you know, it's all messed up, you know, that's how, how inexperienced I was. We had this curriculum where, you know, maybe once every few months, we will go visit the convalescent homes and we will assign a senior mentor. And we get to know them, we get to know the medication that they are taking, we get to see their life, you know, so technically he's kind of my first patient, right? I want to show this slide because even when this gentleman, I forgot his name already, when he was aging, he knew he couldn't do a lot like he was before, but he still found a purpose to serve his community, right? Like he volunteered to be a mentor for young students. He just, you know, talk about his life, tell me about his medication. So I want to say that even for aging adults, yes, they might not be working anymore, but there are still things, brainstorm with them to see, is there anything that they can do that still drives them, give them purpose? Go back. There was a study about the well-being of aging residents in convalescent homes. And they find out that when they give them certain responsibilities, it actually improves their well-being. For example, like they will give them pets to take care of. Easy pets, not like dogs, you have to walk them around, but birds and stuff like that. They realize that actually giving them some responsibility, some purpose of taking care of some things actually improve their mental and physical well-being. So for older adults, we need to help them about a role transition that's going on, right? So when we are young, we might be creating, you know, we might be making things happen. We might be leading an organization, you know, in our 40s and 50s, okay? But as we age, you know, our role has to shift, you know, from a more teaching and mentoring kind of role in your 60s and 70s. And eventually have to shift to more a supporting role, okay? Especially for men who used to be very industrious, you know, work a long hour. They had to do this kind of shift about now it's my time to let someone take the lead. My role now is more teaching, mentoring, and supporting, okay? Help them to come up with ways to think about their purpose, right? What's their purpose towards their family, towards their church, or even towards a broader community? Yeah. Brainstorm with them about things that they can look forward to. Maybe, you know, breakfast with grandchildren. Maybe they enjoy teaching. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not a lot of people enjoy teaching. I'm just speaking for myself. I kind of like teaching. Okay. So find ways what they want to do, like to do, you know, teaching. Some people like teaching, some people like mentoring, you know. I think older people are great teachers and mentors because they have so many life experience, right? Yeah. So find ways, brainstorm ways that things that they can look forward to. You know, you guys can come up with better examples than I do. Okay, next slide. One of the ways when I talk to people about purpose, you know, whether how old they are, whether how young they are, I always want them to shift away from a kind of self-focus, because if people are just focusing on themselves, that is not a sustaining, right? That doesn't last, okay? We want to help them, aging adults, even ourselves, to think about how can our purpose is more other focused, okay? 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14 to 15, it says that for the love of Christ controls us, because we have concluded this, that one has died for all, therefore all have died, and he died for all. That those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. Ultimately, if my purpose of life is physical fitness, self-fulfillment, I will be a very sad and disappointed person in the end, because those will not last. Those motivation is not strong enough. The only motivation that's strong enough to give us purpose is the love of Christ. It says love of Christ controls us. That means that's our fundamental motivation to do things. Not to be liked, not to be praised, but for Christ who died for us, so we no longer live for our own sake. Okay. When you are caring for your aging parents, they're gonna lash out. They might be angry. If your goal to care for them is to please them, you're going to be disappointed. They might not react the way like you want them to. Okay. The only motivation that can keep you going is that you are serving God through loving them. That's the only motivation. Okay. Last one is guilt or regret over the past. Some issues, if not resolved, gets worse over time. Right. Sometimes you ignore it, things to get better eventually, but not all things, right? Some things, if not resolved, it gets worse. And unresolved guilt about past sins, regrets about unwise choices, unreconciled relationship with others can continue to haunt an aging believer, especially when the hopes of reconciliation diminish. So guilt and regret over the past. How can we help them? How can we encourage them? Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 13 to 14 says this. Consider the work of God, who can make straight what he has made crooked. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. And in the day of adversity, consider God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. The first things I want to share, whether to aging believers or the caretaker, is that no one has a perfect life. Okay. Everyone has something that is crooked. Okay. If you have a perfect life right now, great, but something will happen. Okay, something will happen. Why? We need to realize that we are sinners. Okay, we make bad decisions. Okay, we make mistakes. That's a reality. Okay. In marriage, right? Sometimes people want to be the perfect husband or perfect wife. I tell them, no, you're gonna be disappointed. Okay. You're going to be disappointed. Okay. Your goal is not to be the perfect husband. Your goal is to love your wife. Bible doesn't tell you to be perfect, but Bible tells you to love your wife. Okay. So regrets are the normal part of our life because we are not perfect. Okay. So there will always be regrets. Okay. Always be regrets. There will always be decisions that we want to change. You look at your life, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, there are many, many things that we want to do that will be different. Okay. But we cannot change the past, right? You cannot change the past. Another thing is that here it says that both prosperity and adversity are from God. So what does that mean for us believers? Well, first of all, again, there will be good times and there will be bad times. But sometimes, ultimately, we are not the one has control over, right? They are from God. God is in control. Sure, we can make bad mistakes and suffer the consequences of it. But a lot of times, certain things happen, we have no control. It's from God. Okay. We also need to realize that if there's a sour relationship, what happened? We cannot control other people's behavior, right? We have a very limited control over the situation. We cannot fix other people. Okay. When you try to fix other people, I mean, you need to teach your children, okay? Children's, but you cannot fix them, right? You cannot fix your husband. You cannot fix your wife. You cannot fix your parents, okay? You can help them, but you don't have control over what they will say or do, okay? You are not responsible for their sanctification. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? You can direct them and help them, but you are not God. So if this broken relationship, you do what you can, but if it's not restored, leave it up to God, okay? We are only responsible for our thoughts, our attitude, and our behavior, okay? So I will tell them, when they have broken relationship or whatnot, don't worry about what the other person will do or say. You focus on what you will do or say and think, right? In this moment, God wants you to be to pay attention more to your heart than how other people is doing, right? That's consistent with in Matthew's, right? Don't look at the speck of the other person's eye and forget the log in your own eyes, right? We should always be more concerned about our thoughts, attitude, behavior, rather than what other person should do, okay? Philippians chapter 3, verse 13 to 14 says this. But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of upward call of God in Christ Jesus. We press on, looking towards Jesus. Yes, our past shapes and influence, but they do not dictate our future, right? Sure, we make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that, our future is completely ruined, and it's not redeemable because of past mistakes. So really, yes, we want to recognize, past hurts, past regrets, but we don't want to stay there. We don't want to dwell there, okay? We want to help them to transition towards focusing on Christ and the goal of becoming more like Christ, okay? We don't want to always look towards the past about the good old days, okay? Talk about it, it's fun, but we have to be in present and look towards the future. It's not easy to do, okay? But we have to practice that ourselves and help the people that we care, especially if they struggle a lot with regrets. Okay, I have a few slides about help for the caregiver. And then after that, we can transition into some Q&As. Just some practical things, yeah. So whether you are caring for an aging adult or someone who struggles with chronic illness, being a caregiver has really unique challenges. Or even, if your child has special need, yeah, something that's long-term is difficult. But I want you to remember two things as you are doing this. The first one is that everyone is made in the image of God. No matter how diminished they are, whether it's dementia or intellectual disability, or even severe, psychiatric illness, severe condition. The person has a value not because what they can or cannot do, because they are created in the image of God. Okay. We are not going to value someone based on their ability, based on their intelligence. We treasure life because we are the image of God. Okay. Another thing is that as you're caring for someone, this is a particular season, particular trial. And it might be that God is actually working in you through this particular trial. Let me read James chapter 1, verse 2 to 4 to you guys. It says that, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. A lot of times when we care for someone with chronic illness, aging, we become very bitter, why this, why that? But maybe this is the way of God, strengthening our faith. It says, count it all joy, right? Be joyful, because God is working in you in this situation, so that you might be mature, complete, that your faith will be strengthened in this. Philippians chapter 1:6 is that God who begins the good work will complete the work in us. I believe a lot of times we have different trials and sufferings in our life because God really want to do some work in us. And we don't grow when we are comfortable, unfortunately. So keep that in mind. This person is the image of God. And God is also working with you as you care for this person. When you are caring for someone, beware of unique temptations. There will be unique temptations, and you will be tempted in certain areas, okay, as caregivers. We all have certain tendencies that we tend to be sinful about, right? 3 common areas for you as a caregiver to really think about is anger, fear, and indispensability, okay, indispensability. So pay attention to these thoughts as you are caring for someone. Anger is, God, why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you help me? I deserve better than this. I just want a normal family. I can't do this anymore. Be aware of these thoughts, okay? And when these thoughts come up, really pause and think about what's triggering you. Think about why you react in this way. Slow down, reflect, and pray. Think about what God is doing in your life. You cannot be an angry caretaker. That's going to make things even more difficult. You're going to be harsh, whether words or even your action. You might pull, you need to pause, okay? When you realize you are being angry. Even step aside. It is better for you to pause than continue to care at that moment while you're angry. All right. It's kind of the same for teaching your child, right? It's better for you to pause before you're going to discipline or before you're going to do something. You got to recognize what you are going through first. So anger, okay? Anger is important because we don't want to be harsh with our words. We don't want to be forceful with our actions because that could be dangerous too, right? Next is fear. Yeah, fear if these are thoughts, if these are thoughts in your head, what if things get worse? I see nothing but pain for the rest of our lives. unless I make the right decision, I will make things worse. Fear. When you are struggling with fear, you really have to pause. And again, recognize our limitation, our dependence on God. Realize God's promise to us that Christ is with us. God will take care of us. Okay. Fear. Indispensable. If I don't do it, nobody will. Nobody cares except me. Nobody can do it better than I can. Okay. Well, a lot of times that's not true. Okay. You might think you might be the only one, but a lot of times that's not true. There are help out there. Okay. There are help out there. You need to know who to ask. Your siblings or even other church members. Yeah. You might think like people don't want to help, but a lot of times you feel like you're the only one doing it because you have not asked. People don't know your situation. So make sure other people knows what you are going through. And if you start thinking this way, that actually means that you need to ask for help. Okay. A lot of times as caregivers, we don't want to ask for help. Yeah, we don't want to ask for breaks. We feel like, we want to be responsible. Okay. But when y'all start thinking like this, that's when okay, I might need to, find someone to help me. I want to talk about signs of burnout for a caregiver because it's important. Okay. If these things apply to you, make sure you talk to one of us, brainstorm ways, to kind of help you. First one, social. If you're a caregiver, you have no time for outside relationships. That's a warning sign. Okay. If you and your spouse spend little time talking, okay, that's a warning sign. I think it's common, for you're taking care of your aging parents who might not live close to you, whether they are in Taiwan, China, overseas. You might need to spend a lot of time there away from your family. But you got to do what you can to maintain that relationship with your spouse. Okay. If that's disrupted, you guys are not connecting. Okay, that's very unhealthy. If there's persistent unresolved tension between you and other family members, that's an issue. You need to evaluate. Yeah. You feel isolated and alone, that's a warning sign. You need to pause. Okay, you pause. Physical warning signs, poor sleep. You can't fall asleep. Even when you sleep, you are waking up multiple times. Sometimes that's just the nature of caring for someone. Okay. It's difficult, feeling tired all the time. Okay. You stop exercising, you have difficulty concentrating, making decisions. Yeah. These are the signs that you need to take a break, need to pause. Okay. If you keep going, it's not going to be well. Okay. Things are going to get worse. Okay. Spiritual, it's very important, right? Spiritual signs of burnout, you withdrawn from church life completely. Yeah. You stop your spiritual discipline, reading, praying, you become resentful and bitter for the time you care for elderly parents, aging parents. You have little, no joy in life. You're not happy, just people look at you, you always, have a sour face. And you feel like you're just going through the motions when you do things, just going through the motions. That's not good. That's not good. Feeling irritable, feeling always on the edge, anxious. Yeah. If any of these signs apply to you, really talk to someone, okay? Reach out, talk to me, talk to your small group leaders, pastoral staff, your elders, people that you know from church. We want to help. Okay, we can brainstorm ways, connecting with other people, see what we can do. But if this applies to you right now, you have to let us know, okay? Because if you keep going, it's not good for you. Okay, please. Some, practical suggestions. Practical suggestions. You want to involve other people to care alongside of you as much as possible. As much as possible. Okay, don't do it alone. You might feel like you are the only one who can do it, okay? If that's the case, you need to train someone else to do it alongside of you, okay? Maybe right now you might be the only one who knows how to do things. You need to have another person come alongside and show them how to do these things that you do, so you are not the only one, okay? It might take more work in the beginning, but for the long run, that's for the better. You have to cultivate thankfulness, because caring for someone with chronic illness, aging parents, is tough. And sometimes, a lot of times when you do that, a lot of times that might be the lens you look through life. Just a lot of tiredness, just a lot of difficulties. But we need to cultivate that thankfulness, right? Be thankful that they are still with us. Be thankful that however limited interaction you can have with him or her is a very precious moment. Be thankful about even little things in life, that you are still physically able to do things, friendships, reading, enjoying a meal. Those are very important things. Yeah. Don't neglect your personal spiritual discipline, because when we are busy, that usually is the first thing to go, right? When we are busy, no time for prayer, no time to read, no time to think, no time to meditate. But it's important to get our day starts right, be in the right mindset in the morning. So, pray for dependence on God early in the morning. Pray that God give you strength, give you hope, help you to be joyful. I pray that through this, God can mature you, give you wisdom, help you to be more like Christ. Pray that God will bring people to help you, for you to connect with other people. It's important, important. Another thing is that, if possible, depends on the limitation they have. You want to involve the person you are caring while you care for the person, right? So maybe just some small suggestions, maybe when you are doing devotion in the morning, you can read the passage aloud to the person you are caring for, right? Like they might not respond, they might just blink their eyes, but because you just read it aloud, look at them, sing worship songs to them, as you worship, pray alongside of them out loud, or you can listening to worship music or sermons while you are caring for them, okay? Or you might, watch a movie with them. They might not respond, but you watch a movie with them, you kind of talk to them, watch basketball games with them, just talking to them. They might not respond, but it's important they might not respond, but who knows, right? They might sense your presence, your care for them. Yeah, attend to your own health, it's important. Attend to your own health. If you gain a lot of weight, lost a lot of weight, if you're not eating well, if you're always rushed, pay attention to that. And lastly, it's important to maintain your community. It's very important. Don't isolate. Don't isolate. Do not isolate. I always get very worried when people isolate. When I don't see them, I know they are not doing well. Unless they have other communities that they go to now. Yeah. But usually, when you don't see someone on a regular basis where they used to be part of the community, that means they are not doing well. So, as a caregiver, you want to maintain your community, right? Even if you can just come to church for the sermon, you got to go back to care for your parents. Still do that. I know it's a lot of trouble, but you need that time away, to recharge, and then go back. That can help you, care for your parents even better. Yeah. Okay, that's all I have for today. We can go into some Q&A times. But honestly, I feel like there are people here that actually has real experience caring for their older parents or care for someone with chronic disease. So I'm not the one with all the answer. In fact, I probably is the one who has the least amount of answers. So if you have those experiences, those questions applies to you and you have something to share, please do that. Okay. All right. So let's go into some kind of Q&A and yeah.
We only have about 15 minutes, so don't be shy if you have any questions. John talked about a lot, and definitely very helpful. I think one of the things too, John, that I have grown to love the Serenity Prayer more and more over time, and I think kind of when you were talking about some things, really made me think of that as well. And so I'm sharing that in the chat. The Serenity Prayer is that God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. And I never really thought about in the context of aging, but I find it very relevant in the aging process as well. We're all dying, right? So like we said last night, all of our bodies are decaying. None of us last forever. But I think a lot of times, people get frustrated about the things that they cannot control, right? And then it's kind of like wasted emotion and efforts and frustration because it's really, you can't do anything about those things. But wisdom and courage to know the difference and in work, focus your energy on the things that we can change. And I really like what you talked about, just trying to give back, and I guess that shifting gears, as we age. And a plug too. I think a great way, for our elder folks to, find new purpose, or maybe more purpose, whatever, is to really find folks who are willing to meet with them and pass on that wisdom and knowledge. And one of the ways is through at Hsieh Chinese Church, we have a mentorship program that we started recently. And so I definitely encourage anyone who wants to get involved with that, especially as a mentor, to meet with younger couples or people. I think right now it's more towards married couples. Is that correct, Pastor Fred? Pastor Fred's kind of heading that one up. And like my wife and I, Katie, are meeting with him in Ponte LA. Definitely, I think we are in need of more mentors and love to have that wisdom passed on through the ages, especially within the church body and community. A great way to build community for the older folks to feel engaged. Anyone have any questions?
I actually have a slide that might be kind of fun, but people can still ask questions, okay? But I think it might be fun for the group to hear this. Like if you are currently caring for aging parents or patients, friends, like what have you learned in this season? I'm gonna pick on people, but I can only pick on people that I kind of know is in this situation. And the only one I kind of know is Pastor Fred. Pastor Fred, will you be okay to share? I think people are interested to know. I'm put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate a number of things that you share as some practical tips. I think as caregivers, and I've been away for almost 4 months caring for my folks, and I think it's important for us to take care of ourselves because if we don't, then easily, we're gonna get burned out. So whether spending time with God, I made that a priority. I get up and just allocate time with God, reading, praying, and I just connecting with the community. And I appreciate just a number of you have reached out to me and text me, email, written notes, and it's so important to know that you're not alone. you know, it's training physically, emotionally, and all. But knowing that you're not alone, as Dr. John mentioned earlier, I think it's, I mean, having a community, your time with the Lord. I make sure I also do my physical exercise as well. I have certain calisthenics that I do, and that helps with stress that we have, physical stress. We need to be on top of that, and you know, I had that mentality, as John mentioned, about a little bit indispensable, kind of. You know, I could do this. I could do this for a year or whatever. You know, I'm pretty disciplined. I'm pretty strong. I get and so forth, and I'm fooling myself. I'm fooling myself. You know, something that he mentioned says, have good relationship with your spouse. You know, I try talking to Ellie several times a day. I talk to her more while I was away than I'm actually at home. But yet I find they were, you know, we were clashing. We were having misunderstandings and like, oh, what's going on? I wasn't sure what was going on. All of a sudden, we had much more clashing than before, and I became, I had to embrace and realize that I'm wearing out. I'm wearing out. You know, those are signs. And I said, well, I know she understands what I'm doing and why I'm out here, and but not being together for an extended period of time, that's just not good. And I'm reminded that I, you know, as much as I love my parents, next to the Lord, I need to love my wife, top priority. And I wasn't able to do that, and I felt it was not healthy for me to continue. That we had to look at some other options, and how my parents need to be cared for. So some of you might be caring for your parents. You know, somebody wise told me, don't wait until you're burned out. John mentioned some signs, and I think we need to be aware of those signs, and not wait until you burn out. When you burn out, when you're, you know, we're no good for an extended period of time. So anyway, those are some personal thoughts.
Thank you, Pastor Fred.
Thank
I see
you.
some questions in the
Yes.
chat.
Yeah. Yes. Starting with Windsor.
Yeah. Okay. Referring to biblical passages are very helpful for believing parents, but what about for non-believers? Okay. There are many ways to do this. This is what I would usually do. I will start by just listening to them. Listen, because they cannot, they need to know how much you care, right? They need to know how much you care. So you have to listen their story, their hurts, their pain. And what I would do next, you know, after that, I mean, that's pretty fluid situation. After that, I will try to introduce spiritual conversations. You know, things like, you know, maybe a way to do this might be, some example might be they talk about loss of purpose, you know, something like that. And I might just throw out something like, well, what do you think is the purpose of life? You know, and then they might go on. All I'm saying is that while I'm caring for them, at the back of my mind, I'm thinking about evangelism. All right? I'm thinking about evangelism. I'm thinking about how can the gospel help this person? because we know the Bible is true and it's very helpful, but this person does not believe. So yes, I want to build that relationship. I want to help this person, but I also want this person to see the biblical truth, because ultimately I'm concerned about this person's soul, right? Our life now will not last forever, but our soul will last forever. So that would be, there are many ways to go about it, but in summary, in the back of my mind, I wanted to show this person that I care, I love this person, and then I'm going to look for ways to introduce spiritual conversations. And if, by God's grace, he allows, I'm going to try to present the gospel, if possible. I mean, this is not, I know this is not depend on me, right? But that would be my approach.
Can I follow up on that, John?
Yeah.
It's on point what you just said from my experience with my own dad. Problem is my dad is in San Francisco when he was living, and I'm here in Houston, right? So the thing that I learned from my stepmom, which is a very hard lesson that I'll never forget, after the funeral, we sat down and we talked, and my stepmom shared with me that there was that one moment in all those years that he had a dream. My dad had a dream where he was at a port. He was trying to board a ship, and the ship captain told him he could not get on board. And so he was filled with anxiety and really hurt that he could not, because he had a strong desire to get on that boat, and he was not allowed. And that struck me very hard, because what came to my mind immediately was an opportunity to sit down and talk with him about that. And if I were there, ask him why, to expound on that. And it just led me to thinking, had I been there, that would have been a great opportunity to share the gospel. That was, and that really struck me. The lesson learned there was that you would have to be there, just like you were saying. You have to be there to show that you care. In this case with my dad, you would have to be there and just be silent for a long time for something like this to come up. And that's the hard part. That's the challenge, is just being patient and just waiting for that to happen, if it does.
Yeah, and ultimately, God has His plans, and we don't know, in the end. So, yeah. But thank you for sharing that. For Nathan's questions, this is the book I'm referring to. It's called The Gospel for Disordered Lives, and it's not just about caring for older adults, but there's a small section in there that's for aging adult. I actually really like this book. So if you're actually interested in biblical counseling, I would say this will be a good book to start with. So the book.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Ellen has a question about, does our church have any social activity for our aging parents so they can socialize, not be isolated? My parents live near church, Mandarin or Taiwanese speaking, would love for them to enjoy a meal activity with some other elderly folks. Anyone here can answer that question for me? I'm not as familiar with the church ministry in that area.
We don't have anything at this time, but one of the things that we're working on, and Amara Wong is working on that, is to develop a senior ministry to have different activities that's going on. We do have the Rock Fellowship, which is a group of seniors that are 60, 70, 80s year old. There's a good number of them. I had a chance to visited them recently, and they have about 35 families. It's a large group, and they're pretty active. I mean, granted, they're a little bit younger than yours, Ellen. They're active, and they go on trips, and they engage in different things, activities. So that's a possibility. But Amara is working on trying to develop some activities that you're talking about. We're not quite there yet, but we're working on that.
Can I add to that as well? Helen Huang, Hsieh and Helen Huang. I know that Helen,
等一下，
yeah, she's very active with, I guess, the spiritual nurture of the Rock Fellowship members, because she feels driven to, I don't know if she's still doing it, creating podcasts for Rock Fellowship members to listen to. And so, Ellen, if you're interested, you can reach out to Helen to find out what she's doing and what's going on there right now.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and interject here. I just want to announce a few things, and we can see a little bit more afterwards if y'all want to. But thank you, John, first of all, for presenting this information and just bringing up all these topics. Definitely, it's a phase of life that has a whole set of challenges, and just trying to learn to deal with that, both for the elder person and the caregivers. So you can see the QR code is on the screen right now. Again, we are trying to get feedback from everyone. So let us know things you like, things we can improve, and scan that with your phone. Also, the schedule, there's going to be like a lunch break basically. And the next workshop is from 2 o'clock to 3:15 p.m. And that will be on Spectrum of Elderly Care Services by Dr. Hsieh. So 2 o'clock, so approximately 2-hour lunch break. And then also just a reminder that the recordings of the sessions will be available on the HCC website next week. I think that's about all we have officially for right now. And then we can just continue. So feel free to log off if you're
妹
done.
妹你在说什么？
And John, maybe if you have time to stick around if anyone has any other questions. Oh, I think you
If
need
you have
it.
other questions, you can find me at church. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So Chris, I'll close this in prayer.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's pray. Lord, that it is a difficult topic, a difficult task. Whether we are aging ourselves or we are caring for someone who's aging or someone with chronic illness. Lord, I pray that you give us the strength to do that. Help us to find community that loves and cares for us, that we will seek out prayers and share our experiences. Lord, help our church to be a community of love that's willing to care and share the burden. Pray that people will feel comfortable reaching out to people here at our church, and that the Christ's love will be evident in us. And that we do all this, Lord, that because we know that everyone's created in your image and tremendously valuable. Pray for the caregivers who are tired and burnt out, Lord, that you renew them spiritually, you care for them physically, and pray for those who are going through aging, God, that they continue to look to you, knowing that they will be given a new body in heaven, and that they can be renewed innerly by growing more like Christ. Thank you, God, for everything that you are doing for us and being our God. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. See y'all back at 2.
Thank you. Bye.